given to me. It's time to start passing things on to people like you, the young ones, the ones who are getting ready to embark on an adventure, a musical adventure in their lives. And believe me, it is an adventure once you start getting into it. Of course, you know, my name's Lenny Castro. Just a quick history. I was born and raised in New York City. Yeah. All right. A Yankee fan? Yeah, born and raised in New York City. My father, my real father, was a keyboard player in the salsa circuit for a long time, and I'm what you call a second-generation musician. It's in the genes. Unfortunately, he wasn't around to really influence me on a day-to-day basis, but he handed it down to me. Like I said, you know, I'm a second-generation musician, and I went for it. I'm basically a self-taught musician. I started playing pots and pans when I was 3, 4, and kind of frustrated my mother because every time she went to cook, the pots were kind of like this, and she couldn't really do much cooking. So they finally started to get me some instruments to play, and I got this little conga. In fact, my mother still has this little toy conga that I used to play when I was 5 or 6. It's amazing what mothers keep. Yeah, I'll tell you what. Basically, you know, like I said, I'm a self-taught musician. I listen to a lot of music. My parents and my stepfather, who was not a musician, is not a musician. He had great ears, though. He knew what he liked to listen to, and they turned me on to a lot of great jazz. I've got a lot of great salsa. I listened to a lot of pop from the radio. My mother was also a big country western fan, so I got to listen to a lot of that type of music. I really learned to appreciate music at a very early age, all styles, all types of music, which I think helped to make me become a well-rounded musician. As I tell a lot of people, the more you know, the more work you'll get later on in life, you know. Like I said, I'm self-taught. I was given some great gifts from God. I have this one talent that I used to use as a kid. I am always able to listen to something, an album or something like that, a recording, and I could always imagine, I could close my eyes and see just how the person who was playing percussion was doing things. Don't ask me how. It's just one of those things that God gave me. I never questioned his plan. But then later on in junior high school, I started to learn how to read and write music. That's when I came across a lot of great teachers who started to influence me. Let's see. At that point, I got myself a scholarship to a college when I was in junior high school for exceptionally talented children. So at my junior high school level, I was also going to college on Saturdays, which was an incredible experience for me to be hanging out with these college students who were just full of music at that point, you know. And the college wasn't very big. It was very small. In fact, the actor Tony Curtis used to live right next door to it. That was pretty exciting. He used to say hi to him. Hey, Tony, how you doing? It's cool. You sound great. He was a nice guy. Then I went to high school. I went to this high school that was specialized in music. I don't know if you guys remember the movie Fame? A lot of dancing, a lot of jumping around in the streets. Yeah, it really made a lot of sense. That school was the sister school to my school. That school that Fame was about was called Performing Arts. My school was called Music and Art. Performing Arts was more towards the performance or entertainment side of the business. Dancing, singing, Broadway, that type of stuff. And my school was more of the serious music heads, you know, the classical, the kind of more rigid structure. Plus, we had a bunch of artists running around. I mean, Halloween, which is a major holiday in the United States, I'm sure you've heard of Halloween, was a very interesting time at my school because the art students and the music students would get together and come up with some incredibly funny stuff. You know, the art students would come up with these great costumes and all kinds of makeup and stuff like that. It was a fun time. I was immersed in music 7 days a week at that point in high school. Monday through Friday, I went to music and art. Saturday, I went to Manners College. Sundays, I did gigs, either jazz gigs or salsa gigs. After that, I wasn't very interested in college. I was a very impetuous teenager. At 19, I just wanted to play. I wasn't interested in having to sit down in the colleges and stuff like that. So what I did was I got myself a job at a professional drum shop. It was a very famous drum shop, Frank Hippolito's. Used to be on 50th and 8th Avenue, and it was a haven for all the best drummers in the world. And I literally mean that, in the world. Guys like Papa Joe Jones, God bless him, he was an incredible influence in my life. A funny story about Papa Joe Jones. He used to like to have, he called it his medication. He'd show up at the shop and he'd give me some money and he'd say, Lenny, go down to the liquor store. I need my medication. And that meant he needed a little fifth of cognac. So I'd run down and get his little medication. Here you go, Papa Joe, it's cool. But he used to do this thing that I used to love. He played with 2 different sticks, 2 different weights. One of the rarest things that I've seen in a drummer. You know, it's a very difficult thing to use 2 different sticks. I mean, it's a very involved kind of thing. And what he would do was he'd sit around in the drum shop and he'd leave the sticks on the counter. And he'd wait for, he would set a trap. And he'd wait for some young guy to come around and they'd look around. And they'd see the sticks on the counter. So they'd pick them up and go, hey, mister, you got another pair of sticks? These don't match. That was Papa Joe's cue. Wait a minute, boy, you don't know how to use that stuff. Give me those sticks. And he's, wow. So then after that, everybody was looking for sticks that were mismatched. Man, that was some pretty funny stuff. He was always playing tricks on young guys. And the one thing that I used to really love was Saturday nights we'd close down the shop and I would run down and get a case of beer and a couple of bags of potato chips. And guys like Papa Joe and Jim Chapin and Norm Grossman, Elvin Jones, they would come and hang out after hours and just sit around, drink beer, and just talk about the most incredible stuff in their past. One of my favorite arguments between Jim Chapin and Papa Joe Jones was, who was the first drummer to take the hi-hat, which was originally called a low boy. It was about this high, a little pedal and some small cymbals. It was just a timekeeper in the very beginning. So they would argue about who was the first drummer to take the shaft and extend it and start hitting it with a stick. Of course, Papa Joe usually, 9 out of 10 times, Papa Joe would say, oh, it was me. He was, oh, you know, as far as he was concerned, he motivated everybody, you know, but that was his ego and that was his personality, and he was lovely for it. And of course, Jim Chapin would say, no, it wasn't you, it was Babe Dodds, it was so-and-so, you know. The conversation was kind of mute because, I mean, the first guy could have been out here in Europe who did it, for all we know. So many things go on at the same time in history. But just the thrill of just sitting there listening to their stories was an education within itself. I learned many, many things in that shop. One of the main things I learned was having to tuck heads, tuck the gonga heads by hand. I don't know if any of you ever done that. Has anybody ever tucked a head? No? Huh? What does that? To tuck a head? To tuck a head means you take the skin. Our skin usually comes flat, round, flat. It's not, you know, tucked in or anything like that. And what you do is you have to put the head on there because it doesn't come. They didn't come pre-made with the flesh hoop underneath. So you have to take this skin, wet it, take a round metal hoop, put it underneath here, and then tuck the head inside this hoop. Needless to say, I busted my knuckles many times learning this process. Frank Hippolito had a reason for this, because after they taught me how to do this, I had to do all the congas that came in. Oh yeah, let Lenny do it. It was murder. It was horrible. thank God for Remo and the rest of the companies that started making them already prefabricated and stuff like that. But it was an experience that was invaluable to me because it really made me understand more about the drum. If you really want to learn about percussion and stuff like that, I always suggest, you know, to really get into the drums, to the making of the drum, to the sound, into the soul of the drum. What makes it a drum? What makes it vibrate? What makes it resonate? What makes the tones? Not only your technique, but what's in here before you even touch it. You know, I think it's a very, very important thing to really get to know your instrument, live with it, sleep with it, talk to it, make love to it, enjoy it, make it yours. Because like they used to tell me, music will always be your first mistress. You know, and that's how I always approached music in general. Not only percussion, but music in general. It was always my first love, and it always will be my first love. So then, from the percussion shop, I got my first big break. Frank Hippolito came to me one day, and he used to wear his glasses down here. Lenny, I got this telephone number. You have to go audition for this lady named Melissa Manchester. She was a lovely singer, a wonderful lady. I owe a lot to her. So I said, all right, cool. I said, you know, he says, you're looking for a percussionist to sing. And I was ready to do anything. Tap dance, juggle, I didn't give a shit. I wanted to be in the entertainment business. I wanted to play. So as I'm getting ready to leave the shop, you know, I said, okay, Frank, I'll see you later. I'm going down to the auditions, you know, tomorrow. So as I'm leaving, I hear him say, hey, if you don't get the job, you can't come back and work here. I turned around and said, what the hell does that mean? Well, that was his way of pushing the bird out of the nest. You know, he didn't want me to think that I could, you know, oh, well, if I don't make it, I still have a job at the drum shop. That's too easy. It's too easy. That was his way of motivating me, telling me, you know, you're good. You got the stuff that it takes, that you need, that it takes to become a good musician. And he just didn't want me to settle for second best. And needless to say, I did, out of 18 percussionists, I got the job. And from there, Melissa took me to Los Angeles, because she eventually moved out there. And from that point on, my career started to shoot up. I met a lot of producers, I met a lot of other musicians, and I met a lot of great musicians, guys like Jim Guerin, Jim Gordon, Jim Keltner, and most importantly, Jeff Porcaro, who was one of my best friends. And we created a lot of great music. So at that point, I was already settled into LA, and it was all up to me from that point on. So that's basically a short synopsis of my career, how I got here. You know, since then I've played with so many great people, from Diana Ross to Dolly Parton, Burton Cummings, Burt Bacharach, Joe Cocker. I could go on and on and on. If you guys, I'm sure everybody has a computer. There's a website called All Music Guide, right? Is that it?
Yeah, that's right.
All Music Guide. That's right. If you guys go on the website, All Music Guide, and you type up my name, there's a very, very extensive list of people that I've worked with.
It's here.
Very good, Yuri. Jesus, that looks... Oh, my God, it's too embarrassing. I don't even want to go there. So anyway, like I said, if you want to really check out some of the stuff that I've done in the past, go to that website. To me, it's so surprising that I've done so much work. You know, the fact that I have worked with so many people is just due to the fact that I love what I do. I love it with a passion. So I have to do it because it's my life's blood. If I don't do it, I will not live. You know, I have to perform. And I've performed with so many great people. I've been very blessed and honored to have done so many great things with so many wonderful people. I don't even remember some of them myself. I'll have to take a look at that later on, just for the hell of it. Anyway, any questions about what I've just talked about? Anything you didn't understand? Okay, cool. That's very cool. At this point right now, I think I'll play a little bit for you guys. This will be just a little impromptu kind of solo thing on the congas. First off, congas are my first passion. They are my first love. Congas and the skins. I'm just going to do something solo, guys.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, a lot of people ask me, what if I have a preference as far as which instruments I like to play. Congas are always my first love. There's something about when you hit a really great conga and you feel that resonance in your chest, man. It's a lovely feeling. So like I said, the congas have always been my first love. At this point right now, I'll do a little playing. all the stuff that comes off the top of your head. Not planned. It just comes right off the top. Don't ask me how, it just happens, you know. It's due to the fact that I do have legit training, you know, classical training, theory, all that stuff, all the good stuff that you learn in music schools. But I apply all the stuff that I learned on my own with the stuff that I learned in school. And that combination is, I remember when I first started to read and write, it was the first time that I could actually see what I was playing. Notes, see the notes. And my world just went from this to this. There's nothing like knowledge. Knowledge is power. And also, you know, it gives you the tools to create and to go forward and really, you know, do your own thing, you know. So I was, like I said, I was very lucky. I had this one teacher, he was Korean. He's now a conductor for a very famous orchestra in Korea. His name is Sung Kwak. He was very influential in my, especially in reading. He did this thing, it was called interpretive snare drum, which I never understood until I started taking it with him. He was a conductor, his forte was cello and trumpet, knew nothing about technique, but he knew how to convey to a musician, how to interpret notes and all the other stuff that compose music, to interpret it and to make it into a musical form. You know, when I first started doing that, I didn't understand. I mean, how can you take a snare drum and make music out of it? I mean, you know, it's easy for a trumpet player to sit down on a recital and go, you know, do a Flight of the Bumblebee or God knows what else. So it took me a while to really understand the concept, but once I got it, it was amazing. It was like learning a whole new language that nobody else knew, but it was cool. I had a great time doing that, really did. At this point right now, let's see, what should I do? Let's talk about the relationship between drummers and percussionists. It's a very important subject, I think. One I think that needs to be really driven home. I always believe that every percussionist should know drums and every drummer should know percussion. In this way, when they do play together, they lock. That's why I've been able to play. I've been blessed to play with so many great drummers. I mean, Steve Gadd, one of my favorites, of course. Greg Bissonnet, Ferroni, of course, Jeff Porcaro, and Carlos Vega. See, there's supposed to be a marriage between the drums and the percussion. A lot of people, you know, the drummers, sometimes a lot of drummers just are on their own and they just fill up everywhere. You know, they forget there's a percussionist there. You know, you don't have to fill up every space. So that's why, you know, I stress upon, you know, I always stress that drummers and percussionists should always know about what the other does so that you know where to fill and where not to fill. Or, you know, I have this way, I know how each drummer works. Each drummer has their own signature, you know. And I had this talent just to be able, like I said, I'm also a drummer too. So I know how drummers work, you know. I know how they think. So that in turn gives me the knowledge to know when to and when not to. You know, it's a very important thing, very important thing. My relationship between Jeff and, I think the strongest relationships that I had were with Jeff and Carlos. Jeff, when I first met Jeff, we were doing a recording with Diana Ross, and when we first met, it was like we knew each other forever, you know, and it came out in our playing. You know, I mean, we would do things together, and it was uncanny. It was the type of thing where I would play, and we would do the same things together. I mean, we were just mentally on the same level, and it was a really magical thing. And it was the same way with Carlos, except with Carlos, our relationship transcended that because we were both Latinos, so we had a deeper understanding of each other. You know, Carlos and me were like little kids together. I mean, it was ridiculous. Our wives used to hate to be around us when we were together because we were just so silly. We had our own language, we had our own style, we had our own everything, and it was ours. You know, we enjoyed it, we loved it. I really did miss him. He was an incredible guy. But you know, knowing how a drummer works, or if you're a drummer, knowing how a percussionist works, is very important. I think it's excellent, you know, and something that I think needs to be done. It needs to happen. Okay, at this point, let's see. I'm just going to do a little something else here. This is the little thing that I do with the bongos and the congas. I started doing this, God, I don't know. I can't even remember. I don't ever remember anybody else doing it, but it's something that I've done on many recordings, either with Randy Crawford or with the Crusaders, Joe Sample. And it just adds a different dimension. Since they're higher, you know, than these, it adds a different register to what you have. It just takes the register up a little higher, you know. I'll just do a little bit, kind of a demonstration.